Hey everybody, welcome to Build at Home. I'm Ricky Camilleri. I'm joined right now by the wonderful, the fantastic actress Imogen Poots. Thank you so much for being here, Imogen. You're starring in Vivarium, which I watched a couple days ago, and is a head scramble, surrealistic, horrifying take on motherhood. I think in some ways.
Yeah, well done.
But before we even get into that, I just want to say that because of the coronavirus, there have been school closures all across the world, especially in the US, and over 336 million lunches have been missed by children across the country. And if you are watching and if you're interested in finding out how you can help, how you can donate, please go to nokidhungry.org. And there's a ton of different resources on there for you to donate, volunteer, so you can figure that out. Imogen, thank you so much for being here, for taking the time. How are you?
Of course, it's so wonderful to talk to you. It always is.
Oh,
I'm okay. I'm in England and I'm in London, and I think we're all sort of going through a similar experience at the moment. But you just got to take each day as it comes for the time being, I think. And as much as it seems a little silly to talk about movies that are coming out. At first, I sort of felt strange about it, but I'm realizing that it's actually maybe a good thing to do.
that's what we're all doing, is watching movies right now.
Right.
Have you had any time to watch anything while you've been locked in, shut down? Have you been watching anything fun?
Quite a few things. I had never seen Swiss Army Man, so
Oh,
I loved it. I thought it was
yeah.
brilliant. Yeah, it's such a random movie, but I was like farting corpses. I hadn't seen that one, and I was blown away. I thought it was amazing. I thought the actors were fantastic, and then I finally watched The Jinx, which I had been meaning to watch for a very long time, and I realized that Durst is now going through another trial.
So you went from like a farting corpse to a burping old man.
Yeah.
Because isn't he at the end, when he's being recorded, isn't he like burping in the bathroom while he's confessing?
And then in the voice when he's in the bathroom, and obviously he's like, I of course I killed them all or something, which is horrible. He also was like, what was the burping about?
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's what it was. He's chastising himself for burping.
So good. It was great just for that. Yeah.
That's so fantastic. Well, that's good to hear that you're catching up on some great stuff. That's what this time is for. I've been trying to like watch really good things, and I find every now and then I'm like, oh, I'm gonna watch Tarkovsky's Solaris, and then I'm like, no, I'm gonna watch RoboCop 2.
Yeah, well done. You've got to mix it up. You can't get too in that stuff.
Tell me about Vivarium and how this came about. Obviously, it's your second movie in 2 years, in basically in a year, with Jesse Eisenberg, coming from Art of Self-Defense. But you are essentially, well, it's a duo. You are the main character of the movie, I feel like. So how did this movie come about, and what was your take on it when it was pitched to you?
I just thought it was really unique when I read it. And it's always surprising when a project like this actually has financing behind it, because it was so obscure and absurdist, and I was just so happy that someone was going to make this film. And I didn't fully understand it at first. It had a lot of different elements to it, and I knew what I was connecting with, but I didn't know if that was sort of relevant to the director's vision and all of those things. So we met up and we spoke about the script, and he had some wonderful film references like Upstream Color, the Shane movie, and Todd Haynes' Safe, and these great films.
Safe, very much a movie for right now.
Yeah, exactly. A little COVID-19 number.
Yeah.
So I sat down and I watched a lot of these films, and in line with Lorcan, our director's sort of vision for the film, I got really excited about it. And then Jesse came on board, which was awesome, because I've said this a few times, but on the page, the male part was somewhat thinner. It wasn't as present as the role of Gemma, and it's quite rare to get a male actor to sign on and support the lady. So that was really cool that he was up for it, especially after just doing karate together for months on end.
And also sort of taking the character in a direction that I think Jesse never is allowed to take a character. He's a handyman. He's kind of I wouldn't necessarily say he's overtly macho, but he's kind of a guy's guy in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was really cool talking to him about that because I think he would agree. He's got so much range within him, and it was really interesting to see him play this. He called him sort of like a jock character, like he seemed to sort of represent the all-encompassed like male, and he had very masculine traits, and even the gender role of the whole character, and for Gemma too, is really on point.
Go back to getting the script from Lorcan, because I'm curious what a script like this even looks like on the page, how detailed, how descriptive it is, and how it sort of makes you understand something that is relatively wordless and is about atmosphere and environment.
Yeah, it's funny. It reminded me actually of, just to drop in a pretentious sentence right now, it reminded me of a Terrence Malick script because it had a lot of description and then quite sort of limited dialogue actually, and so it very much seemed to me like a template of an idea, and then understanding how everything connected, it was far more fruitful and had a lot more grounding it than just sort of ideas or metaphors, what have you. And so it was quite sparse, and then when we sort of got to it sort of had benefits and disadvantages to it at the same time, because you yearn to try lots of different things if it's quite simple, but at the same time that's quite it can be a seductive trap because it's there already. It was a great enough story that it had everything in place.
Actors always talk about trusting their director, and they always talk about it. Anytime someone comes on, like, I just really trusted the director. But when I watch something like Vivarium, that is a situation where the actor truly has to trust the director when they say yes to the project, because you can't really see on the page what, like, if you get an Aaron Sorkin script, it's pretty much going to be a filmed version of that. Whereas this, you don't really know exactly how it's going to come out.
Exactly, and especially with first-time directors. Lorcan had done a feature prior in a short film that was very much like a prototype for Vivarium called Foxes, about suburbia. But totally, it's not like you're getting a script and you're like, oh, it's going to be an Aaron Sorkin movie or it's going to be a Terrence Malick film. It's sort of unknowable. And it takes a lot of trust for him too in us that we're going to be on board with his vision, I think. Because the project certainly demanded a massive lack of vanity, and as independent cinema always does, the filming is always like ridiculous and the strangest things happen and get in the way. But
where did you film it?
In Belgium and in Ireland. So
wow.
Yeah, we had sort of Belgian producers. So suddenly I'm sure some moments are like very Belgian, then other moments are like very Irish. Just the meals we were eating. But yeah, we had sort of finance from both of those places. And he had to trust that we knew the tone as well, because I think that's one way for your actors to really mess up your film. But it seemed
I like that in no way you or Jesse are playing it surreal. You are playing it very grounded, very realistically, no matter sort of how outrageous the circumstances are.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. I remember at first we were talking about that as to where to sort of gauge and how to gauge the tone. And Jesse pointed out that to have two characters like constantly positing where they were and why they were there would just be so boring for an audience to watch. You're like, we don't know why you're there either. But it was important to have that sort of grounding of experience in the face of absurd circumstances. And I've said it a couple times before recently, I think, just like with hindsight, in the past I've certainly made mistakes in trying to match the tone with a performance. It just doesn't work because you have to bring your audience with you and sort of be their vessel throughout the madness.
Speaking of tone, you have what I reference consistently as one of my favorite last lines in any movie, which is in Green Room, tell someone who gives a shit. Which that's the exact line, isn't it? Find someone who gives a shit, something like that.
Yeah.
But your delivery of that is so understated and almost muted. And I'm wondering, when you're doing something like that, you know it's going to be the last line of the film. How, like, what conversation went into that last line? Was there specifically, like, how do you want me to say this? Or did you know how the character would say it in that moment?
I remember that. I remember filming that vividly because there were these dogs, and there were dogs everywhere, and I was quite scared of the dogs, even though the trainers were there, because they're always trying to like snap and break out of their chains and like bite your dick off. But basically, there was one dog with a really gruesome face, who I think was called something like Grim, which was obviously like short for Grim Reaper, which is just anyway. So that was happening. And then I remember the character of Pat, who Anton played, was so he'd almost at that point I could see he would be irritating Amber so very, very much. It was just like, no, not in this moment of time are you going to ask me that in question. Who is this guy? And they're still stuck together. And I remember it just being sheer frustration at this other human who was sort of like some sort of barnacle still attached to her.
Yeah, so because she's like, he's like a sweet punk kid, and she is in fact, prior to, like, as much as she joins up with him, prior to the movie starting, she is a neo-Nazi. Like, she's a psychopath in a way. She's not gonna like this guy.
No, she's been trapped with the mummy's boy. It's completely ridiculous. But yeah, I remember that so clearly. But I do, of course, recognize and in that moment the weight of having the last line of a film. It's the same as a play when you have the line that everyone knows that character for, and even if you try and sort of deliver it nonchalantly and truthfully, it's still gonna sort of sound hammy, you know.
Yeah, well, because some movies, there's always a last line in a film, but rarely do movies, are they willing to sort of rest the entire movie on a punchline, and that is a punchline in the movie.
Yeah, that's true. And I think our director Jeremy Saulnier would love that, because he's all about like the formula of like a great theme or something like that.
Yeah, he owns that and does it better than I think most people are able to really do that right now. You have always had a I feel like you're always working with either first-time directors or directors who are on their second film. It feels like you like taking chances with new young directors. Is that true? Do you look for that?
Yeah, maybe accidentally that's happened. I think so. I know there was a period of time in my early 20s, and I also think that's kind of it was a snobby time, but no bad thing. I remember not wanting to be a part of a certain thing, and sort of I wanted to peer behind the curtain and sort of see where just I guess people were thinking maybe more outside the box. And I knew that filmmakers I really loved, they had to come from somewhere. I mean, even with somebody like Derek Sion-France of Blue Valentine, he was working prior to that movie on all sorts of different things, and also with people like Kelly Reichardt. They all crossed paths. So it's sort of, all these filmmakers have to begin somewhere. And I think risk taking is a big part of this job, and I think it's really exciting to be with someone who's so passionate about what they get to do. But at the same time, like, how cool to then work with a Jim Jarmusch and someone who's been doing it forever and has honed their craft. And I suppose it can hopefully be a mixed bag, and you don't want to just stay doing one thing. But a lot of these guys know each other. That's the beauty of it. Like Macon Blair, obviously he's a great filmmaker, and the Zellner brothers. There's a whole like Austin contingent of first time or second time feature directors, and they all support each other.
Did you find when you got into this, were you like a filmmaker first actor? I know some actors they love to perform. They don't necessarily know who all the filmmakers are, but it sounds like in your early 20s when you started acting, you sort of knew who the sort of cinephile directors were and knew that.
Yeah, I think that would be true, just in the sense of, I remember the first movies that I really adored as a teenager. They were Badlands by Terrence Malick. It was The Bicycle Thief. The best. And Hannah and Her Sisters by Woody Allen. there were certain movies that really struck me, and it was normally because of the person behind the camera. But then I also think it's sort of part of your job, I think, to educate yourself on a cinema that's come before and is obviously deeply historical, but also what are the things now that are exciting and asking important questions and trying to make sense of the world in a different way. But I'd also say I'm quite actor drawn. Like there are certain actors I'm obsessed with, and I'll just watch everything they've done. And that's
can I ask like who?
Yeah, of course. Well, I found obviously Philip Seymour Hoffman when I was younger. I thought like, oh, that's God. So just watched like everything, and of course by way of him learned about Paul Thomas Anderson, but also directors like Tamara Jenkins, who did The Savages and then went on to do Private Life. I also think Michelle Williams's collaborations with Kelly Reichardt are amazing, and then through her you find other actors, and there's sort of it's a good way into cinema, I think, all of that stuff.
There's a great someone just posted it recently, but I had seen it when I was younger. There's a great clip from a behind the scenes making of Magnolia where Paul Thomas Anderson is making fun of Philip Seymour Hoffman for being an overactor, and he does like this
thank God
he does this like extended impression of Philip Seymour Hoffman ruining a scene from overacting.
That's good. That's good to know. That's good to know.
Yeah, it's real. And Hoffman is like loving it and laughing the entire time, but it's like kind of a beautiful. Someone posted it like a couple days ago and was like, "This is the only thing getting me through this period of time right now," and it is absolutely wonderful.
I'm gonna find it. Sounds cool.
Yeah. Speaking of tone, again, you did Art of Self-Defense last year with Riley Stearns, that was his second feature. And I loved Art of Self-Defense. And that is another project that hinges completely on performance, the tone of the performances. What kind of conversations did you guys have about that? Could you tell how to do it based off of the script? How did that go?
That's a great question. I also thought you were going to say it's another movie of like pure punchlines, like obviously, but then there's also just like so many one-liners that are brilliant. It was pretty obvious from the script what the tone was, but I still wasn't 100% sure. I thought maybe I'm just reading it a certain way, but I knew that Jessie at that point would be playing the lead, so that gave me some sense of it. But then I spoke to Riley, the director, and he basically was a character from the movie. I mean, it happens that way. It's like he was just completely in line with the dialogue and the sort of the rhythm of the piece, the way that he is as a person. So that was a relief and made a lot of sense.
So it was like so clearly channeled from who he was that all you had to do was really talk to him and be like, "Oh, I get it."
Yeah, it's like, oh, we're all playing Riley Stearns. Okay, cool. That's basically what it was. Be more like Riley. But that happens. I think that happens quite a lot. It's like an author when their book is adapted. They end up casting someone who looks like the author. Not that I look like Riley, but same thing.
Have you found that before with writer-directors where you are curious and then you talk to them and you're like, oh, clearly this is from your head and the way that the rhythms of this are how you speak?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's sometimes quite helpful. If I was to say to you, oh God, the director gives you a line reading, it's horrible, and it can be horrible depending on what the intent is. But sometimes it is helpful, and Jeremy Saulnier would be someone who was very, the way that he directs you is he sort of acts it out, which is just humorous but also helpful. And definitely like Terrence Malick, of course, if he would describe, she's like a dappled leaf in the sunshine, and she falls down, stuff like do that then.
A dappled leaf in the sunshine. You can interpret that and put that into a performance.
Yeah, only you. There's a pressure cooker on that set. You have to just take. I once asked him where my character was from, and he said she's from everywhere and nowhere. She's like smoke. So.
Oh my God, that's so awesome.
Right.
Like, only Terrence Malick.
I know. Anyone else used to be like, fuck off. But of course you're like, okay, great, thank you.
And when you're doing something like that with Jeremy Saulnier, where he is kind of performing it, I mean, people are always told that that is something that would drive actors crazy. Is there something about the way that he does it where it's sort of like, oh, I get why you're doing it this way, and it is actually helpful?
Yeah, I just feel as well. There's always it's a sensibility about someone, and it's sort of it's tangible in the room when you're being directed by somebody that it's going to be there. Um, the piece will be imbued with their soul, with kind of how they are as a person. So a line reading obviously ultimately is super limiting and unhelpful, but in the sense of understanding that this is going to be a window into the world that that director has created. It's really strange how personality traits can sort of by osmosis end up in your character of the person helming the piece sometimes, I think.
I also imagine it helps, like, no matter how they're directing, if you get a sense that they know, like, what the F they're doing, fine, direct it however you want. We're in good hands. It's okay.
Yes, exactly. It's always a massive panic when someone's like, "What do you think? You think like a happy one or like a sad one?" And you're like, "No, you should not be here. No one should be listening to you." Oh my goodness, and that happens.
Right, like, you tell me. This is your movie, your story.
Yes, 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 yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, I have to let you go. I love Vivarium so much. You have so much work that I love. I'm such a huge fan of your stuff.
Thanks.
Vivarium is current.
It's a great show.
Oh, thank you. It's so nice to be able to have you on right now. Vivarium is on demand right now. People can see it on demand. Correct?
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Because all the cinemas are shut down. So
Yeah.
VOD.
And I highly recommend it. It's one of the weirdest viewing experiences I've had in a long time, and incredibly rewarding for that reason.
Great. Good. Good. Good.
Imogen, a pleasure talking to you. Stay healthy, stay safe. I'll see you on the next one.
See you later. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.